Okay guys, welcome back. This is going to be podcast 10.3 on animal diversity, and it's going to be your last podcast in the animal unit. So let's go ahead and get started. Once again, we've got the animal evolution cladogram. It's been in every one of your podcasts. It's in your packets, in your notes. It's really important, so I want to make sure that you guys see it a lot, study it, take notes on it.
Alright guys, we're going to start off with invertebrates. These are your different phylums, which you should notice for making your phylum book. This is porifera. These are your sponges. They have no distinct tissues or organs. They have a few specialized cell types. Now there is no symmetry, so that'd be asymmetry. You can't divide them down any line where they would be mirror images on either side. They are sessile as adults, meaning they are attached to the surface. Now they do take in food by endocytosis with each cell.
Okay, another type of invertebrate is Cnidaria. These are going to be like your jellyfish, hydra, sea anemones, and coral. They do have tissue development, but no organ systems. They have two cell layers. They've got radial symmetry, so remember that was the symmetry that was kind of like the spokes on a wheel. They are predators by means of getting their food. They've got these tentacles that surround their gut opening, and they also practice extracellular digestion. Extracellular meaning outside of the cells. What they do is they release enzymes into their gut cavity, and they also do absorption by the cells lining in the gut area of the animal. This is just kind of a diagram of what the stinging cells of cnidarians look like. Okay, you can see that the tentacles are up here, and then there's individual little stinging cells here, and then it kind of goes into detail showing you what actually happens with the sensory cells and the stinging cells.
Alright guys, moving on to platyhelminthes. Now these are your flatworms, so that includes tapeworms, planaria. These are mostly parasitic, so they are parasites. They do have to live off of a host. They have bilateral symmetry, meaning they can be cut one way, for example on this one down the middle, and it would be a mirror image on each side. So they have a right and a left side. They do have a head, which would be the anterior, and then they also have a posterior end. They do have cephalization, and remember that's when the sensory organs are concentrated towards the head or the anterior end. They are increased specialization in their body plan. These do have, this is acoelomate. Remember, acoelomate means that there's no true body cavity. They do have the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, but not the body cavity in order to develop the internal organs.
Okay, the next invertebrate phylum is the Nematoda. That's going to be like our roundworms. They have bilateral symmetry. So again, that's like us, right and left side. If you come down the middle, their body cavity is going to be a pseudocoelom. Remember, that's a false coelom. It's a simple body cavity. It's more than acoelomates, but it's less than true coelomates. Their digestive system is just going to be a tube running through the length of their body from their mouth to the anus. And a lot of roundworms are going to be parasitic. An example of that is a hookworm. This is a microscopic image of a hookworm. It's really kind of scary. These hooks that you see right around this opening actually are what attach them to their host. This is what it would actually look like in a person that's infected with a hookworm. This is, you can kind of see it right under the surface there. It's pretty scary stuff.
Alright, moving on to mollusca. These are your mollusks, which are your slugs, your snails, clams, and squid. They're also bilateral symmetry. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, they're bilateral. They do have soft bodies, which are usually protected by a hard shell. Now, they do have true coelom, meaning their body cavities are able to produce these more complex and specialized organs in order for their bodies to carry out certain functions.
Okay, Annelida, these are going to be like the earthworms like you're familiar with. These are called segmented worms. Another example would be leeches. The segments are what you see, you know, when you look at an earthworm and you see all those individual little lines, that's segmentation. So what segments do for animals is they increase their mobility, and there's a redundancy in the body sections, which redundancy just kind of means a repeating pattern. They are also bilaterally symmetrical, and earthworms are like us. They are actually true coelomates. They have a true body cavity in them.
All right, moving on to arthropoda. These are spiders, insects, and also crustaceans. They do have bilateral symmetry, so they do have the right and left side. They are segmented. They have certain specialized segments, such as their jointed appendages, which would be like the claws of a crab or a lobster or something like that. They do have an exoskeleton, which is made of chitin and protein.
Okay, so in the phylum Arthropoda, there's going to be a couple different differentiated groups. So the first one would be arachnids. All right, that's going to be like your spiders. The way that you tell them apart is these are the ones with 8 legs and 2 body parts. Examples of these are going to be spiders, ticks, and scorpions. Now notice, here's the 8 legs that they're talking about. When they say 2 body parts, they're talking about 1, 2. The second arthropod group would be the crustaceans right here. Now they are going to be specialized because they breathe through gills, and they have 2 pairs of antennae or antenna. These are going to be crabs, lobsters, barnacles, and shrimp. And then the last of the arthropod groups is going to be insects. Now these are going to have 6 legs and 3 body parts, as opposed to the arachnids that had 8 legs and 2 body parts. So that's how you can tell the difference between an insect and an arachnid.
Okay, moving on to Echinodermata. These are our sea stars, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. They are radially symmetrical as adults. They do have spiny endoskeleton. All right, and their opening does develop into the anus, which, remember, that's deuterostome.
Okay, so this is going to be an invertebrate quick check. It's kind of like a little quiz on the invertebrates that we've gone over so far, and there they are listed at the top. What we want you to do is we want you to jot these answers down in your notes, and they'll be part of your notes that we'll check when we check them in class. So the first one, which group includes snails, clams, and squid? Which group is the sponges? Which are the flatworms, the segmented worms, the roundworms? Which group has jointed appendages and an exoskeleton? Which 2 groups have radial symmetry? What is the adaptive advantage of bilateral symmetry? And which group has no symmetry? Okay, so you can go back in the podcast, find these answers, jot them down, and have them as part of your notes. Okay, so let's move on. Now we're going to get into the vertebrates, okay? The actual phylum is called Chordata for spinal cord, but it's all the same idea. Vertebrates are animals with a backbone, and then the phylum is called Chordata. So you can see right there that vertebrates is the next point. The examples that they give are going to be fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. We've already kind of done those stations in class. Something that differentiates these from the other invertebrates, or from the invertebrates, would be the internal bony skeleton. There is a backbone encasing a spinal column. That's very important to note. They also have a skull encased brain. Their brain is inside of a protective skull. There's also, in this category, there's also a deuterostome. Remember that that's the whole of the organism that becomes the anus. The protostome is the whole of the organism that becomes the mouth. Okay, so it's just showing all of these things that have developed with the vertebrates or with the phylum Chordata.
Okay, the first part of vertebrates is the fish. Now these are like salmon, trout, sharks, any fish you can think of. Okay, some characteristics of fish, which would be in their body structure, is their skeleton is made of bones and cartilage. They do have jaws and paired appendages, which are their fins. They are made of scales. Now, body function, their gills are used to exchange gas. They do have a 2-chambered heart and a single loop circulation, so you can see in the diagram over here. All right, and they are ectothermic, meaning that they are cold-blooded. All right, and reproduction in fish, now this is external fertilization, meaning the female fish is going to drop off eggs, and the male comes by and fertilizes these eggs externally. They do not happen inside the fish.
Okay, this is just showing you a little evolution of tetrapods. Tetra, remember, means 4, so that means, and pods means feet or legs. So it's talking about the evolution of animals having 4 legs, their transition to land. So it just shows you down here, kind of going from a lobe-finned fish to an early amphibian, how the fins of the fish ended up becoming legs eventually, so that they could live on land. All right, so the second group of vertebrates, the amphibians, this is going to be like frogs, salamanders, toads. They were kind of observed around 350 million years ago. Some characteristics of the amphibians, as far as their body structure, they are tetrapods, so they've got 4 legs. They also have moist skin in general. As far as their body functions with breathing, they breathe through lungs. And also they exchange gas through their skin as well. They have a 3-chambered heart as opposed to the 2-chambered heart of the fish. It's a 2-loop circulation. They are ectothermic, which is similar to the fish. They're cold-blooded. Their reproduction, they also have the external fertilization, external development in an aquatic egg. And they also go through metamorphosis, which is when the animal goes from a tadpole into a frog as an adult.
Okay, moving on to reptiles. These were observed 250 million years ago. These would be our dinosaurs, turtles, lizards, snakes, alligators, crocodiles. Now, these have very dry skin. They still have scales, and they're considered to have armor. All right, in their body functions, they do use lungs for gas exchange. They do have thoracic breathing. They also have a 3-chambered heart with 2 loops, and they are also ectothermic. Reproduction, though, is internal fertilization. Now, there is external development of the amniotic egg. So they do lay eggs, but it's produced inside the reptile.
Okay, so birds or aves, some examples they give: finches, hawks, ostrich, turkey. Again, you know, a lot of examples of birds. They were observed about 150 million years ago. Their body structure in general, they've got feathers. They fly with their wings. Their bones are going to be really thin and hollow, very lightweight. Their body function as far as breathing, they've got very efficient lungs and air sacs in their lungs. They have a 4-chambered heart like we do. They're endothermic like we are, which means that they're warm-blooded. They regulate their own body temperature, regardless of the temperature outside. Reproduction, they have internal fertilization, but then external development in the amniotic egg, just like the last one. So internal fertilization, the fertilization takes place inside the animal, and then the egg is laid and it develops outside of the animal.
All right, moving on to mammals. You can see 220 million years ago is when the first mammals were observed. 65 million years ago, that's when humans were actually observed. So we have mice, ferrets, elephants, bats, whales, and humans. As far as characteristics, all mammals have hair, or body hair. They have specialized teeth. They do have lungs and diaphragm as far as breathing. They have a 4-chambered heart, and they are endotherms, meaning we regulate our own body heat. As far as reproduction, this is internal fertilization and also internal development in the uterus. So that does get nourishment through the placenta. They birth live young, and mammary glands make milk in order for feeding the young.
Okay, so here's some subgroups of mammals. You've got monotremes, marsupials, and placentals, and it all has to do with how the baby is carried. So monotremes, these are going to be egg-laying mammals. They lack a placenta and true nipples. These are going to be like duck-billed platypus, echidna. This is a platypus right here. They're really cute. Marsupials are going to be the pouched mammals. So these right here, see, like the kangaroo, and the offspring feed from the nipples that are actually inside the pouch. They have a very short-lived placenta that they survive off of. The other examples would be koalas and possums. And then placental would be true placenta. That would be like us. Also shrews, bats, whales. And the placenta that we use is just a nutrient and a waste filter for the baby. Okay, so just like we did an invertebrate quick check, we want to do the same thing for the vertebrates. So here's your questions. You can go ahead and read what they are, and then go back, look for the answers, and jot them down in your notes. And then we're going to go over them in class, check them, and then go over the correct answers. But that's about it for this podcast. Make sure that you jot down any questions you might have, and we will see you in class. Hope you had a good spring break.